Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Aisha. Today I'll be sharing my October reading wrap-up, all of the books and essays that I read in October. In addition to talking about the books and essays that I read in October, I also have an announcement that I want to share with my subscribers that have been on this channel with me for almost 4 years now. I started this channel January 1st, 2022, and 2026 is coming soon, inshallah. So I have an announcement, so make sure to stay till the end of this video so that you can find out what the announcement is. So in October, I read 6 books, which is crazy because it seems like I've been reading 6 books for the past 3 months now. I hope I can increase it to 10 this month. So the first book that I read in October is For You Are Still a Goat by Mhlongo. And it is a collection of 10 short stories from the South African author Mhlongo. So this short story collection is very interesting. The, I guess, satirical tone of it reminds me of Heartlamp, which is also a short story collection by Banu Mushtaq, but they're not exactly the same type of stories. For one, these stories are set primarily in South Africa, with the titular story For You Are Still a Goat being set in Berlin, Germany, which I found very interesting. And coincidentally, that is my least favorite story of this collection. Yeah, I just didn't really enjoy it much. But I enjoyed pretty much all the other stories. So I'm going to read a description that I found on Storygraph. This is a short story collection. This short story collection is filled with memorable characters, intriguing plots, and twist endings. With his keen observations and insights into human nature, Mhlongo explores the things people do for each other, but also to each other. Injustice, corruption, love, and desire are just some of the aspects of human interaction featured here. A family refuses to leave when the bank repossesses their house. Stalking has an unexpected outcome. A desensitized morgue manager is poked and more. So reading this gives me nostalgia of the stories. So the first story is called Unwelcome Guest, and this is the story that revolves around a family that refuses to leave when the bank repossesses their house. It's a very interesting story. The main protagonist in the story is a young boy. So the tone of the story has a mischievous, interesting, observant feel to it. The story about stalking that takes an unexpected outcome is the story called The Stalker. The twist of that story is very unexpected. Very unexpected. Another story that I found really interesting is Joe Oslerberg Prison Cell. Also has an interesting twist at the end, but more importantly, I learned about one of the anti-apartheid figures in South Africa. This anti-apartheid figure is called Ahmed Timul. I hope that's how to pronounce his name. This man was an Indian South African anti-apartheid figure, and he died in detention while he was arrested by the apartheid South Africa police officers. So his death was dismissed as suicide, but I guess in late 2000s or early 2010s, the case was reopened and then they found out that he was actually murdered by the police. For my thoughts on this book, I wrote that I would definitely be reading more books by Mhlongo, as I was pleasantly surprised by the humor with which his stories handled important conversations. I enjoyed almost all of the stories, and they all had a definitive end, except for the titular story, which is such a shame because that title gave me more expectations. But that still leaves 90% of the book, which I enjoyed. I can also tell that he writes female characters very well, so I'm excited to experience his novels, so I can be sure to add him to my Hall of Fame of African male authors who write female characters well. I always get excited when I find African male authors that know how to write complex and non-stereotypical female characters. Chimeka Garrix is one of them. I absolutely adore the way that he handles his female characters, and I am adding Mhlongo to that list as well. I gave this book 4.5 stars. The next book that I finished in October is this one called John Agard's Windrush Child by John Agard. This, I guess, like a children's book, it's a picture book, which I found randomly in my library for Black History Month. I shall mention this, but October was Black History Month in the UK, so I tried my best to read Black British books, or at least books by authors that are from former British colonies. So I tried to do that as well. This book I wanted to read specifically because the backstory is the Windrush generation, a beautifully evocative story of a child's journey to England on board Empire Windrush from an internationally celebrated multi-award winning poet and an extraordinary debut illustrator. You're stepping into history, bringing your Caribbean eye to another horizon. With one last hug, Windrush child waves goodbye to his Caribbean home and sets sail across the ocean to Britain. In this powerful picture book, full of hope and promise, celebrated author John Agard and illustrator Sophie Bass movingly evoke the journey made by children and their families as part of the Windrush generation. This was an interesting book, poet's picture book. I really liked the picture. I did not give it any stars, to be honest, because I didn't know how to feel about it. It was just something I read, and obviously very glad that I read it. The next book that I read in October is A Forever Kind of Love by Adesuwa Nwokedi. So this is an example of an author that is not Black British, but is an author from a former British colony, i.e. Nigeria. This is my first book by this author, and it was for a love bug. Yeah, that's the name of the read. I can never remember the name of the reading club that I'm in. But yeah, it's A Love Bug ALB Reading Club, hosted by Orelua, the amazing, beautiful, smart, industrious Orelua. But yeah, she hosts the A Love Bug reading community, and basically it's a community that reads African romance novel. So this was the peak for, I think, was it October specifically? It was a weekend in October. Yeah. But anyway, I read this book based off of that. This book is the latest book in the Mhlongo romance series, and it's my first book that I'll be reading by this author. So I have a backlog of about 5 books that I still have to read, but you don't have to have read the previous books in the series to enjoy this book. 20 years after Ogonna broke Nonso's heart, their paths cross again. Only this time, she's the one desperate for a second chance. At first, he relishes the reversal, the beautiful woman who once shattered him now wanting to win him back. But soon, he falls for her all over again. 3 years into their renewed relationship, after struggling with past hurts and current disappointments that have kept him from releasing his heart to her, he's finally ready to risk it again for her until it blows up in his face again. 2 decades after graduation, Zina is just as popular as she was in high school, with a thriving career and a boyfriend who checks every box. She's convinced a proposal is on the horizon, but beneath the surface of their picture-perfect relationship lies something darker. Though Nonso and Zina were once inseparable as teenagers, a bitter fallout has pitched them apart for decades. Their animosity deepens over the years until a high-stake business deal forces them together. I love this book so much. Tension simmers, but so does the echo of a once powerful friendship and the stirring of something even more complicated. As their respective challenges bring them closer, Nonso and Zina must confront not just their past, but the fragile, unexpected bond now growing between them. What starts as a tentative truce becomes a rekindled friendship and then something far more intense. But as ghosts from the past and tragedies from the present emerge, they must decide if what they have is worth fighting for. I love this book so much. I gave it, if I am not mistaken, 4.25 stars. I'm not even sure why I gave it 4.25 stars. Because I really enjoyed this book. So first of all, I have found that my favorite romance trope is not enemies to lovers, like I used to think. So I like friends to lovers, but there's this very specific niche kind of friends to lovers that I like. I detest, I hate, in fact, I am tired of this trope where, we've been friends since we were children and one of us has liked the other since we were kids, since we were like 5 or 6 or one ridiculous age. And then they kept it, they were doing friend. And then later in adulthood, we now start liking each other. And then we now say, I've actually liked you since we were children. Stop that nonsense. Don't do it again. K-dramas are always doing that nonsense and they need to stop. But anyway, the reason why I really love this book is because it's not that kind of friends to lovers. It is more so they were friends. They were just good friends. They just really liked each other as friends. And then they had a falling out, and then they rekindled their friendship. And after rekindling their friendship, they then, started their romantic journey, started feeling each other. That's the kind of thing that I like, because that is more realistic. Nobody is liking one person from when they were please now, don't stop all this nonsense. I'm going to read my thoughts that I jotted down in Storygraph. This is my first book by this author, and I'm super grateful to Orelua at ALB Reading Community for giving us access to this work. I really enjoy the story of Nonso and Zina. This might be unexpected, but I love how much backstory we get from these characters, and that I could see when their love story started. I've gotten really tired of we used to secretly love one another when we were kids trope. I really, really, really mean this thing. And then Zina, she's such a babe. Zina, she's best in boundaries and pretty good with emotional regulation. She's very good with emotional regulation. Regulating her emotions I feel like it's a very subtle trait that she has. She's able to forgive herself when the need arises and take on lessons life thrusts her way. For example, Zina learns the hard way and acknowledges that in this life, a woman should never say, "It can never be me," because it can always be you, like mad. Anything can be you in this life as a woman in a heterosexual relationship. You should never say that it can never be you, because it can. Overall, this is a good book. I only gave it 4.25 stars because it dragged in a few parts and I got tired of their love making sense at some point. Okay, yeah, that makes sense now. They had sex a bunch of time, which I don't mind. I love a good steamy romance, but it was just annoying at some point. Like, okay, we get it. People are making love and you are enjoying it. Move on. I shall be reading the remaining books in the Mhlongo I series, and I highly recommend this if you're looking for a nice African/Nigerian romance novel. This is a very good one. The next book that I read is The Mermaid of Black Conch by Monique Roffey. Near the island of Black Conch, a fisherman sinks to himself while waiting for a catch. But David, the fisherman, attracts a sea dweller that he never expected. Acacia? Oh, this is how to spell her name. Akea is how they pronounced it, because I listened to the audiobook. So this is how to spell it. Akea is an innocent young woman cursed by jealous wives to live as a mermaid. I really like the spelling of her name. When American tourists capture Akea, David rescues her and vows to win her trust. I'm so glad I didn't read this blog, because it would have given away so much in this book. No, it doesn't give away so much, but I didn't know that David was going to rescue her when I was reading the book. I just got into the book. I did not read anything about the blob. Okay, let me just carry on. When American tourists capture Akea, David rescues her and vows to win her trust. Slowly, painfully, she transforms into a woman again. Yet, as their love grows, they discover that the world around them is changing and they cannot escape the curse forever. Yeah, it was actually a really sad book. Ugh. So, my thoughts on this book are, I didn't dislike my experience with this book. And in fact, I love the coming of age / exploration of sexuality arc and the commentaries on race, especially in interracial romantic relationships. I really enjoyed that part of the book. But there was just something else missing for me. And I can't quite put it into words, but it's missing just that thing. I'm not sure what was missing for me for this particular book, but I don't know, it was just missing something. I really enjoyed the story. I enjoyed getting to meet the characters. I absolutely enjoyed the dramatization of the book. So they had 2 audiobook readers reading the book. One of them I have listened to his recitation before. I actually even said this in my thoughts. I love the audiobook performance, though. Ben Onukwe also read Minty Ali. Minty Ali I read, I think back in 2023. I'm pretty sure I read it in 2023. And I appreciate getting Akea. This is how I spelled her name because I didn't know how to spell her name. But yeah, I appreciate getting Akea's POV in poetry form. It's such a beautiful way to preserve the idea that she's from the earlier people. So, like I said, there were two audiobook readers that narrated this book. Ben Onikwe narrated the major part of the book, while Ikea's portion of the book was written in poetry form, and another audiobook reader, I can't remember her name, she dramatized this side of the book and she read it in poetry form. Because of the differences in the, I guess, generation between David and Ikea, narrating Ikea's POV in poetry form is such an interesting way to preserve that poetic nature that we sometimes think that earlier people might have had. So I know that in Yoruba mythology, for example, we know that oral storytelling is very much our tradition, and I imagine so for many other African and maybe Caribbean cultures that also sort of mimic poetry. So take, for example, the griots storytellers or singers of West Africa. So there's that idea that the earlier people spoke in poetry, and I feel like that is mirrored in the way that the author has done this. But anyway, I'm just rambling on. I gave this book 3.75 stars. Book that I read in October is The Adoption Papers by Jackie K. So Jackie K is a black Scottish author, and this was one of the reasons why I picked up this book. This is a poetry collection. I was very interested because aside from Layla, I don't know any like ethnically black Scottish authors. She's her father is a Nigerian man. Her biological father is a black Nigerian man, and her biological mother is a white Scottish woman. Jackie K tells the story of a black girl's adoption by a white Scottish couple from 3 different viewpoints: the mother, the birth mother, and the daughter. So this is an autobiographical poetry collection, you could say, because this is basically Jackie K's life. So like I said, our biological father is a Nigerian man, our biological mother is a white Scottish woman, and she was adopted by a white Scottish couple, and she grew up with them. I enjoyed the first half of this poetry collection. It gave me that telling stories with poetry vibe that I really, really enjoy. I have enjoyed this with Deaf Republic. I feel like this is done best in Deaf Republic. I can't remember the name of the author now, but Deaf Republic was such a brilliant way of telling stories in poetry form. I love when that is done. There's another author that did this that I really enjoyed one time. What's the book called? Agard of Rainfall by Inua Ellams. Is also a black British author, now that I think about it. But yeah, anyway, moving on. There was one poem in the second part that highlighted the author's queerness, and I'm pretty sure is autobiographical. That was when I kind of clocked that this short story collection is pretty much autobiographical, because she had mentioned this friend in the first half of the book. It was a good read overall and an interesting look into black Scottishness. I gave this book 3 stars. Last but definitely not the least, I feel like this might be this is not the book that I gave the highest stars, but this is one of my favorite books of October. So I read Feminism Interrupted, Disrupting Power by Lola Olufemi. This is non-fiction, and I'm smiling because this book, I really enjoyed reading this book. It was a very stimulating experience reading this book. So, like the title suggests, this is a feminist piece of work. This book is an introduction to theoretical feminist thinking, feminist thoughts, and particularly intersectionality where feminism is concerned. I'm going to read the blurb of the book. More than just a slogan on a t-shirt, feminism is a radical tool for fighting back against structural violence and injustice. Feminism Interrupted is a bold call to seize feminism back from the cultural gatekeepers and return it to its radical roots. Lola Olufemi explores state violence against women, the fight for reproductive justice, trans-misogyny, gendered Islamophobia, and solidarity with global struggles, showing that the fight for gendered liberation can change the world for everybody when we refuse to think of it solely as women's work, including testimonial from Sisters Uncut, migrant groups working for reproductive justice, prison abolitionists, and activists involved in the international fight for Kurdish and Palestinian rights, Olufemi emphasizes the link between feminism and grassroots organizing. Reclaiming feminism from the clutches of the consumerist neoliberal model, Feminism Interrupted shows that when feminist is more than a label, it holds the potential for radical transformative work. So, I really enjoyed this book because it challenged my thought process in many, many aspects of what I consider feminism, and even challenged me to explore some of the things that I have not thought about to fall under the idea of feminist liberation. So the first one being that it is important for me to strongly believe and see the world that we want to achieve with feminism, like to see the future, the just future, where women are liberated from state violence, from gendered violence. Not just women, vulnerable people, children are liberated from gendered violence. And it also cemented the idea that everything that I know to fall under misogyny inherently leads to sickening violence against women. So one chapter that blew my mind is the chapter on reproductive justice versus reproductive rights. So I am pro-abortion. I believe in abortion. And I say this even as a Muslim. Obviously, I have there are Islamic rulings that I follow. I am a woman and I am a Muslim woman. So I'm a practicing Muslim woman. So I believe in the tenets of Islam. And in Islam, the woman that is alive takes precedence over the baby. It's just that's it. You take precedence over the baby. In Islam, zina is a major sin. So the concept or the idea that abortion is only done when somebody has been quote unquote wayward or they've been sleeping around, it doesn't apply in Islam, because the first step is a major sin. So zina is a major sin. You should not be having sex outside of the boundaries of marriage in Islam. I have my reservations about the institution of marriage itself, but I am a practicing Muslim and I believe vehemently that zina is prohibited in Islam. And it's not just zina by women, it is 100% including men. And in fact, I'm a big hater of the fact that Muslim men tend to forget that the idea that zina is a major sin in Islam covers them as well. And some Muslim women also forget that when they say that, oh, they want their husband to be experienced. Girl, where is your husband going to learn this experience from if he doesn't commit zina? Anyway, let's not even talk about that one. So like I was saying, so because I already believe that, zina is a major sin in Islam, when I say that I am pro-abortion, I am not, the argument that, oh, you want to have abortion because you want to be wayward, it doesn't apply, because it just doesn't apply. So I believe that within a marriage, for whatever situation, I am pro-abortion within a marriage, because the woman that is alive takes precedence over whatever baby or babies is abstract. Because a pregnancy, unless the child is born, to me, a pregnancy remains abstract unless the baby has come to life. But there are rulings on abortion in Islam. There's a time frame where abortion doesn't become murder in Islam. I'm going to say it with salt in my mouth right now, but I believe it's either 120 days or 40 days. I'm not sure if it is 40 days or 120 days. I think it's 40 days. I'll confirm and put it on the screen. But yeah, so within the tenets of Islam, I am pro-abortion. 100%. The idea that what we should be advocating for is reproductive justice over reproductive rights is well examined in this book, and it got me thinking about the fact that I, as a migrant woman, I've been living in a bubble where I think that because I am legally a migrant, like I have the card, the passports, the papers, all of this thing. I am living under the delusion that the reproductive laws that applies to quote and unquote illegal migrant women would not apply to me. I don't know why I was living under that delusion, but this book, it made me re-examine the fact that whether or not I am a legal migrant in countries like this, for example, I live in Germany, I still fall under what people would consider an illegal immigrant, an illegal migrant woman, basically. So, and I have experienced something like this that cemented this idea for me. So, I went to a gynecologist once, and doctors were German doctors anyway. When you go to the German doctors and they are doing checks for you or whatever, they tend to have conversations with you. I love doctors like that. They're just, want to get to know their patients more. So my doctors tend to do that. And this gynecologist was like, yeah, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. Where are you from? And depending on how I feel about the situation, I either say I'm from Nigeria or I say I'm from the UK, because it's just a thing, to be honest. So with this gynecologist, I just said, I was from Nigeria. Or did I say I was from the UK? I think I said I'm from the UK. I'm not even sure what I said. Whether I said I was from Nigeria or from the UK. One of the two. And I said I was from the UK. And then she asked me, did I grow up in the UK? I was like, no, I moved to the UK in my late teens, early 20s, early 20s or late teens, just so that either one chat. And then, because sometimes I don't like giving them fully accurate information, because what are you using all this information to do? So sometimes I tweak it. But anyway, I think I told her late teens, early 20s. And then she was like, did I move to the UK alone? I said, yes, I moved to the UK alone. And the next thing she said was, so are you a refugee? And I remember looking at her like, why would you say that? And it clocked in my head that for them, the image of a refugee, the idea is that if you're a black Muslim woman that observes the hijab and you're in a place like that, you are almost always a refugee. That's the idea in her head. So when I looked at her, I think she caught it. So I said, no, that I studied in the UK. It's like, okay. So the next thing she said was, so you moved to Germany for work? I was like, yes, I moved to Germany for work. And I'm not sure if it is a combination of the look that I gave her that made her realize that assumption was very, very microaggressive and borderline racist. Because what do you mean? So you're a refugee. But anyway, so when I was reading this book and I came to the chapter about reproductive justice versus reproductive rights, I recalled that experience and I realized that the fact that I am a legal migrant, I have the papers and all of that, does not exclude me from falling under the reproductive injustice that migrant women as a whole, whether or not they are legal or illegal, would experience in places like this. And that's reoriented my idea of intersectionality of my feminism, and I'm grateful to this book for doing that. I am very happy that I read this book and I gave it 4.25 stars. I'm not even sure why I gave it 4.25 stars. You probably increase it to 4.5 stars. I've come to my favorite part of this wrap-up series that I do, and this is the essays that I read in October. So the first essay that I read in October is, I guess, an article. It's not really an essay, it's an article. And this one called Using Vitamin C with Iron, Enhancing Absorption and Other Benefits. This was just an academic article that I read trying to find ways to enhance the absorption of iron. Another article that I read is Aisha Ife, the Lagos Photographer Spotlighting Joy by Adetoun Samiat. So I think I came across one article from Culture Custodian. It was about one Yeye man that died one time, Ilya, and I didn't want to put that article in this wrap-up, so I instead decided to read this article by Adetoun. Another article that I read in October is The Most Loving Thing You Can Do by L.C. Lohenen. This looks like a German name. Lohenen. Anyway, this is an article about documenting important things down for your loved ones in case you die. Another article that I read is Our Thinkers Are Dead and Their Replacements Are Illiterate on the Cost of Nonchalance by Ariane Artan. I haven't read anything by this author in a while, so this was quite refreshing for me to read. Another interesting article that I read in October is this one by Mutia Badruddin called Driving Through Life as a Fully Veiled Muslim Woman. This was such an interesting essay. I really enjoyed reading this essay because she explores the differences, cultural differences of driving as a Muslim woman, very, very visible Muslim woman in different cultures. And it was so interesting to watch the transition. And she does this with such cute humor too. Oh, I really like this author's writing. Yeah, you need to read this article. This was such a brilliant article. I'm so glad that she wrote this. Another article that I read in October is The Tragic Fate of Josan Women. I'm not sure who wrote this article, but I read this while I was watching one K-drama called Bon Appetit, Your Majesty. And it was basically when one of the characters was saying something about increasing the numbers of tribute women to give to the people from Ming. I was thinking, tribute women, okay. So I went to read about tribute. I searched about tribute women, and then I saw this article. Anyway, women are going through a lot. So the next article I read is on Reclaiming Islam from Patriarchal Interpretations by Marianne Muse. So this article, this author, I came across her account on TikTok, and she was talking about this article that she had written. So I had gone to Substack to read this article. And it's basically examining the way that Muslim women online particularly are now becoming more vocal about reclaiming Islam from the red pill patriarchal nonsense that has been circulating in the internet for a while now. The next article that I read is 21 Observations from People Watching by Shani from Skin Contact. This was quite interesting. I didn't even know that painting weddings was a thing. Like, people sit down and paint weddings, and yeah, this was quite cool to read. It was really, really cool to read. Another article that I read that was quite profound in October is Kun Fire Kun by Adam. This was such an interesting essay. I'm going to read an excerpt from it. Sometimes I imagine all the things he must have said be to the oceans, the thunder, the angels, the sky, and among them, he said it to me, to my heart, to my soul, and he says it still in small, unseen ways. When I recover from sadness, when I smile again after a long cry, when I find strength I didn't know I had. Every moment of healing, every unexpected peace, every tiny miracle is him saying again, be. I really enjoyed reading that article because Kun Fire Kun is a verse from the Quran that translates to be and it is, which is what Allah says when He wills for something to be. Kun, Fire Kun, be and it is. So that is why she's saying Allah says be to me. It's so romantic. Anyway, another article that I read in October is Having a Boyfriend Embarrassing Now by Shante Joseph. I feel like everybody should have read this article. This article went viral on social media towards the end of October, and I read it. It's basically examining the fact that low-key online among the girlies, having a boyfriend is low-key a bit embarrassing now. Anyway, this article was funny. You should read it. Another article that I read is Unrot Your Brain by Kylie from Plum Pits on postgrad decay and the fight to feel sharp again. And I think that was the last article that I read. I didn't read that many articles in October. So yeah, that's pretty much it to my announcement. I'm very excited about this announcement. But essentially, since I took my hiatus from YouTube for all of 2024 and about 3 months at the end of 2023, I feel like I have found my rhythm on YouTube now. So for most of this year, I've posted a video one Sunday every 2 weeks. So I don't know what you will call that. Is it bi-weekly? No, bi-weekly will be twice a week, no? I've enjoyed this because it has been easy for me to balance filming, editing with my 9 to 5 and other life things I want to do. But to celebrate my upcoming 4th year anniversary on YouTube, I have decided that from next week, from the 23rd of November, which is in 2 weeks, I'm going to be uploading a video every Sunday for the following 5 weeks. So from the 23rd of November up until the 28th of December, I'm going to be uploading a video every Sunday instead of every 2 Sundays. I'm still going to maintain the same rhythm. It's going to be some bookish videos, vlogs, and it might be bookish vlogs as well. So not just sit down videos. It might be wrap-ups. It might be me going to bookshops, me interviewing book peeps, me going to book festivals. So yeah, just bookish videos and lifestyle videos, bookish videos, lifestyle videos, back to back for the next 5 to 6 weeks. So I hope you enjoy this, and yeah, I'm looking forward to filming and editing and posting. We have come to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching this video up until this point. Please let me know how many books that you read in October. I'm interested to see if you read any Black British books that are interesting. I will see you in my next video in 2 weeks. Bye.